Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and good afternoon. It's 4 minutes past 12. It's good afternoon now. It is Parashat Vaetchanan, and I pleaded. We've been reading from Devarim, Deuteronomy 4, 1-8, Yeshayahu, Isaiah 40, 1-11, Matthew 7, 7-14. This parasha literally has my name on it. Chanan means to be gracious, to show pity, giving rise to the very common female name Chana, grace. It's the same word as we hear in the Aaronic blessing. Vayer Adonai panav alecha vechanecha, may Adonai make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you, same word. And it's a very good name for this parasha. It talks about how Moshe asks for God's grace, for his mercy. The scripture describes how Moshe is pleading with Adonai. And by the sounds of it, he is properly pleading. He's not just asking God, he is begging him on his knees, heartbroken, desperate to convince the Almighty to listen and to understand. We all know what proper pleading is like, don't we? If you've ever prayed for something so much that in the end you feel like you've used up every single word there is in your vocabulary, every single Bible verse that you think talks to the subject, you've looked at it in every different angle, just trying to make God listen until in the end you're just so tired that all you can do is to sit quietly before God with that ache in your heart, hoping that he will hear you in the silence. I think that this was Moshe. For Moshe, this thing that he wanted so badly was to enter the promised land. It's been in his mind for the past 40 years. The very goal of every day, every moment since God called him. I imagine that he woke up in the morning thinking about the land, going to bed in the evening dreaming about the land, always wondering, how much longer? When will we finally be there? Never had he imagined that at that moment when he was standing at the border, God would forbid him to enter. But we know the story, don't we? Moshe struck the rock at Meribah instead of speaking to it, and this was his punishment. Yet, at least to me, this seems like a quite harsh punishment for a fairly small crime. I mean, people have been forgiven for a lot worse. Moshe didn't go out to kill someone, to cause harm. All he did was to hit a rock. And neither is he asking for something grand, something intrinsically bad. All he's asking for is something that is, or should be, I think, in the heart of everyone who loves God, to one day see his land. I can understand why Moshe would think that having a discussion about this to the Lord might actually persuade him and let him in. Of course, in this case, God is not going to allow himself to be persuaded. We can discuss why this was the case, why it was so important for God to put down his foot and say, no. Some people say that Moshe's disobedience, hitting the rock, was maybe a sign of something worse, his heart having grown distant to God, Moshe actually feeling rebellious at that moment, and God therefore really had to give him such a harsh punishment. Other people say that maybe it was of uttermost importance that Yehoshua led the people into the land and not Moshe, a new leader for a new era. maybe hitting the rock was much worse a crime than it looks on the surface. I preached on this about a year ago, about the importance of the rock and the living water. Maybe there is something in that. Or maybe it was the grace of God who told Moshe, this is the time, now you come home. You don't have to go through all of those hardships that are going to be on the other side of the border. Just come home and rest with me. We have no record of God ever explaining to Moshe the reason by his decision. Surely in heaven he did, but while alive, we have no record of it. You can spend a whole day just discussing the reason behind God's decisions, and I don't want to do that today. Actually, what I want to focus on today is simply the fact that God said no. That even if you want something really, really badly, something seemingly innocent and good, God might say no. That even if you pray for something earnestly, eagerly, and honestly, heaven sometimes just remains silent. You know, when we talk about prayer, when we teach people about prayer, we like to lift up Yeshua's words that we just read. Keep asking and it will be given to you. Keep seeking and you will find. Keep knocking and the door will be open to you. And people might say that that means that all you have to do is just to keep on asking, keep on seeking, keep on knocking. And if God is not answering then what you have to do is just add a little bit more faith or a little bit more humility, as if God is sitting on his heavenly throne with a bucket gathering up your prayers until it reaches a special level, and then he'll act. Moshe's story here teaches us that is not true. In the parasha today, God is saying literally to Moshe, enough. Don't speak to me about it ever again. He actually tells Moshe to shut his mouth and keep on doing what it is that he already knew that he had to do. The case is closed. The door was locked. The answer was no and nothing. No knocking, no pleading would ever change it. Now, it's not a pleasant topic to talk about, to think about. Part of me wished that we wouldn't ever have to discuss it. Now, I wish that every story would have a happy ending, and a happy middle, and a happy beginning. I wish that we never had to be disappointed or sad. I really wish that Moshe could have walked across that border together with Yehoshua. And there, under the palm trees, they would all have had a great big party and they would have been happy. But that's not the case. The truth is that history is full of Moshes, examples of tragic events happening to those people who are just trying to do what is good. Me and my husband, just a few weeks ago, we were visiting one of the Nazi concentration camps that kept a lot of political prisoners. A lot of these political prisoners were Christian leaders who could have decided to stay quiet and out of harm's way. But instead, they decided to stand up for what they believed in, to raise their voice for the Jewish people and for the equal right of every human being. Now, inside the prison complex in the camp, on the walls, in the cells, there are plaques commemorating these people and describing how they were brutally tortured and murdered. Don't you think that these people were crying out to God in those moments of despair? Of course they were. But God did not free them. What did God do when they stoned Stephen for preaching the truth? What was God doing when David was kneeling by the bedside of his dying son, fasting, sitting in sackcloth, asking for forgiveness? And we know that David was not innocent, but he was eagerly asking for forgiveness. And we know he was a man of God's heart, a man who was used to hearing God's words, but in this very moment, there was no mercy from heaven. Imagining myself in Moshe's shoes, I'm not only aware of the pain of the dream that would never come true, but I'm also wondering what Moshe was thinking about God in that moment. Was he angry? We know that Moshe often in the past had been fighting with anger. Was he disappointed? Now, Joseph said last week that in the desert, surely there was always sunshine and good weather, but in this very moment inside of Moshe's heart, there might have been rain clouds. Profound experiences like this can leave you feeling shaken. Shaken at the core and shaken in your faith, leaving you feeling hard done by, make you even question the very nature of God and whether or not He's actually for you. No, none of us would treat Him as a vending machine. None of us would expect Him to cater for every one of our needs. All of us would say that we serve Him out of love and nothing else, expecting nothing in return. Of course, the sacrifice of Yeshua covering up for all our wrongdoings, that is enough, that is well enough. At the same time, though, I think that all of us, when it comes down to it, hope that when we really need Him and when we cry out for Him in despair, then He will be there for us. He will show His love and mercy, because that is who He is, that is what we know Him to be. So when you're in a situation, when it seems like God is not acting as you would have hoped, as you would have believed that He would do, you're faced with a decision. It's very easy to grab onto that bitterness and get back on God, robbing Him like you felt that He robbed you, hurting Him like you felt that He hurt you, giving Him less because you feel that He gave you less than you expected, less than you deserved. Alternatively, you have to somehow get your head around the idea that God can still be all that almighty, all that omnipotent, care that much for you, even if He did not save you from your uttermost desperate situations. No, David gets up from the death of his son, gets up from the side of the bed where his dead son is laying, and it says that he goes straightway to the Mishkan to worship. And Moshe does something very similar. Now, in our modern Bibles, we have something that's called chapters. But I think in this case, the gap between chapter 3 and 4 of Devarim, it's stealing some of the thunder of the amazing testimony of Moshe. If you read it without the gap, you'll see that Moshe gets straight up from this discussion with God and he goes on to teach Israel, preparing them for the land that he would never see. This might be the very reason why he started writing, teaching Devarim, because he knew that these were his last days. He had thought that he would be able to walk with them and continue teaching them, keeping them on the straight and narrow, but then he heard that he couldn't, and he decided to give them an extra teaching, his own take on it, so that they may remember and do right. But although these are the circumstances of his teachings, there is no bitterness and there is no anger in his words, is there? He just gets on with his work as if nothing bad had happened to him, as if everything was okay. How did he manage to do that? Where does he get that strength and the motivation from? I think I might have an idea about Moshe's superpower, and I want to try to explain it to you. If you think about it, what is really the goal of all these things that we ask for ourselves? I'm not talking about the prayers that we say for others. I'm talking about the prayers that we say for ourselves, our own wishes, our own desires. What's the aim of them? What was the aim of Moshe wanting to enter the land? Why do we care so much to live in safety, to live another day surrounded by friends and family? Why is it so important to us that we can do those things that we love and have all these things that we love having? I think if you summarize it, you can bring it down to this. 2 things that we are always hunting: an inner sense of peace and an inner sense of joy. For an example, we all want a purpose in life, right? But it's not for the sake of the purpose itself. It's because that when we know that we are following that purpose for our lives, we can find peace. We can relax. We know that we are doing the right thing. We love to have friends and family around because of all those joyous moments we have together, but also because having these people around, we know that we always have someone to lean on. We can feel safe. We can have peace. We just want to be able to do all these things that brings us joy, because we want joy. We want to be able to have these things that makes us feel safe, because that's what we're searching. Even physical pain, we hate it, because it steals our ability to enjoy life. We shy away from all situations that are stressful or challenging because we just want peace. We don't want to be stressed and worried. Now turn that around and consider that you were not worried about anything and you were happy inside. What else is there that you really need? Everything else would just be frosting on top of an already really tasty, nice cake. Shaul teaches us about this. He was very keen on teaching his Talmidim about it and pray for them that they may understand it. He says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow by the power of the Ruach HaKodesh." And he also says, "For the kingdom of God is not a matter of what we eat or drink, but of living a life of goodness and peace and joy in the Ruach HaKodesh." What I'm trying to say is this: if you already have a deep sense of peace and joy, it will not matter so much to you whether or not God decides to fulfill those wishes and dreams that you have. You will still want things. You should still have dreams. And only someone who's out of their mind wants to suffer, wants to go through tribulation. No one wants that. It's okay to want things. But if life throws you lemons, you will still be okay if you have those 2 things. However, should you hang your joy and your peace on the fulfillment of those dreams, your own list of wishes, then not fulfilling them will be the end of you. They would be replacing God as your motivation, your direction, your purpose. You'd be desperately hunting for them day out and day in, getting more and more depressed, more and more desperate as you're not receiving them. And should you then ask God about them, that he may give it to you, and then he decides not to, then you are dangerously close on walking out on God, because he's not providing you this thing that you think is the most important in your life. Well, this happens, of course. People look at all the bad things that has happened to them, and they decide that either there is no God out there, or he's not that powerful as he claims to be, or that he simply doesn't care. Moshe could not deny that there was a great and powerful God out there, but he could have decided that maybe God did not care about him. After all the hard work that he had put down, all the sacrifice that he has laid down, he never wanted his job. He said many times, "Please, not me, Lord." But he got on with it. And in the end, he didn't even get that one thing that he so wanted. He could have decided, in order to reach his goals, that he should have walked away from God. But he doesn't, does he? He keeps on going. And I think the only way that I can see that this would ever happen is if he knew to lean on that peace and that joy that Joel teaches us about. So how do you get to this position? Now, some people like to remind themselves that God is in control, that he's got an ultimate plan for everything and for your life. Some people like to count their blessings and remember all the good things that God has done for them. Some people like to open up the Psalms and see it says there, we shouldn't worry, we should rejoice, and then they just do that. Now that doesn't always work for me. Not if the disappointment is deep, not if the sadness is really real. Now I overthink things. I think about all the different reasons why God would have decided to act in this and that way. But in the end, the brain can't grasp God. It can't bring the kind of faith that you need. It can only bring doubt. I can't make my brain fool my heart to be happy or to not worry. My brain has far too many what-ifs to do that. No, my only hope is for God to give that peace and joy supernaturally. And he does. He can do that. He can give you those feelings so that you will be okay. Even if God takes that neat list of ideas and dreams and crushes them in his hand, you'll still feel that you're okay. It's not logical. You can't put your finger on it. You can't try to describe it, but it is still very, very real. And actually, that peace and joy of God is so much better than the vending machine God that is there to grant all your wishes. The end result will be a lot better, not only because you will be following his grand master plan for the universe and for you being the ultimate you, but also because your ideas of what will bring you joy, what will bring you peace, what will meet your needs, those ideas are usually turning out to be less perfect than we imagined. We don't actually always know what it is that is good for us. You know how it is. We could spend a whole day imagining how wonderful it will be when you get home from work, right? And you get to sit down in your sofa, and you get to take out that piece of strawberry pie from the fridge, and you get to eat it. And you're just imagining how amazing that will be. And as the day goes by, you get more and more hungry, and you can't imagine anything more amazing than that strawberry pie. All your issues will disappear as long as you can just go home and sit in the sofa and eat it. It will be so great. It will feel like sitting in heaven. And then you come home, and you sit down in your sofa, and you have a piece of the strawberry pie, and it's good. No, it's good. But not at all as close to what you imagined it to be, and it's over in a minute. Worldly pleasures are often like that, flighty and a little bit disappointing. The Haftorah that we read earlier speaks about this. I've sometimes wondered why God would find it appropriate to comfort us by describing us as grass that is withering away, like flowers that are blowing away in the wind. No, like saying to someone who's feeling down that their troubles doesn't matter. And that's not usually what we do, is it? When we're trying to cheer someone up, we tell them how wonderful they are and how surely next time, if they just keep on trying, then it will go better. It will all work out in the end. But that is not God's tactic. Yet God's words are encouraging. For a person whose joy is in the Lord, who has things that they want in life, but ultimately knows that all things are just like the flowers in the meadow, the grass on the fields, beautiful and flighty, who learns to take a step back from all that I want and just be joyful in the Lord, leaning on the fact that He's under control. You know, going back to the quote from Yeshua that I read earlier, asking you will receive, knock and the door will be open to you. That was never about receiving what you asked for. Yeshua keeps on saying, if you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask Him? He promises that whoever turns to God, asking, seeking, knocking, he will receive something good, but not necessarily what he asked for. And actually, by not receiving what you asked for, you may receive the very best of gifts. By having to confront our relationship with our inner wish lists, we can instead receive the superpower to withstand almost anything. Joy and peace of God is a superpower of all believers to face whatever comes up ahead and still be all right. And we might very well come to need those superpowers sooner than we think. And God has not promised that life here on planet Earth will get any easier. On the opposite, He says it will get harder. The world will burn. There will be wars and there will be famines. We don't know when this is going to happen, but we know that for each and every day that goes by, we are one day closer to that. So it's never too early to have that conversation with God about how much you hang your feelings of security and happiness on things that might very well be taken away from you, on the flowers and on the grass, so that God can prepare you, prepare your heart, like the virgins prepare the oil lamps, waiting for their Lord. Now we can get through all these things, all the things that are coming against us. Even with a smile on our face, we can face it. If we can just get our heads around and our hearts around the superpower of Moshe. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.